Yo, what's up, everyone? This is Terry with College Football Stop. I bring you another show today. Got a lot to get into, man. It's Friday. Today is December 1st. That time of the year, football season's almost over. Obviously, we hate to hear that. But we got some games this weekend, and these games, like I said, they have an impact on how the remainder of Ohio State's season plays out. So um, I'm going to talk about each one of these games that does have an impact, and I'm going to predict who I think will win them. I didn't get a chance to kind of dive a little bit deeper into them throughout the week, so we'll go ahead and do that. I want to talk about some things with the transfer portal. Not going to be a super long show today, but I do want to get into some of this transfer portal stuff. I don't have like a ton of inside information or nothing like that, but I want to talk about what positions I think that Ohio State needs to focus on in the transfer portal. And some of them could be this early open period, but obviously they're going to have another open period later in the year, like around spring or whatever. But right now is the time when I think that you could probably get some starters at because you got guys who are going to leave teams now, who are maybe playing above the level of that team. You could bring some of those guys in, and even maybe people who just have really good players who are coming back for another year that are in front of them. So really, this portal window to me is probably the most important one, just because I think that you can get some really good players out if you're aggressive in this window. And then obviously later you can still get some bodies and maybe a good player or two. But again, I just think that this one is super important to be active in. So we'll talk about that. So I do want to start by talking about the games this weekend. The first one's tonight. So we get football on Friday night, and it's going to be a hell of a game too. Oregon playing Washington for the Pac-12 championship. Honestly, the first time that these two teams played, Washington won, but if you actually watch the game, Oregon probably should have won the game. They made a couple decisions that were bad ones, and Washington capitalized on it. But don't get me wrong, it's not. I don't know what the spread is on this. I think it's something like 7 or 9 points or something towards Oregon. Washington is not going to come into this game without looking for a fight. They don't have a great defense. I think Oregon probably has a better defense than them, but Washington has the better quarterback in my opinion. Michael Penix Jr. He's got that dog in him, man. He's just one of them guys who he could put 500 on you right now. So, and he did that to Ohio State. If you guys remember, he played for Indiana in 2020, and he threw for 500 yards. Ohio State almost lost that game. So, and obviously, Bo Nix is probably going to end up winning the Heisman. So, for me to say better quarterback is kind of wishy washy, I guess, because a lot of the things that Bo Nix does is just his athleticism, his decision making, and the way he runs that offense. But if I'm just looking at strictly quarterback, like who I would want on my team, um, to where I can trust them to basically run any offense, I'm taking Michael Penix Jr. So again, I mean, even though Washington already beat them and is sitting at number 3, Oregon is still favored to win the game. So I mean, we'll see what happens. I think that'll be one of the best games to watch, though. For in terms of a football fan, should be a lot of offense in that game. Just two high flying teams. So make sure you watch that one tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. That is. And then the other game that this one has major implications for the remainder of Ohio State's season, and it's going to be on tomorrow at noon. So we're going to kind of know if we're live right off the bat after the first game. Oklahoma plays Texas in the Big 12 championship game. I saw like a graphic or whatever that said Oklahoma has beat Texas like 8 out of the last 10 times they played or something like that. But this Texas team is different, right? I expect Texas to win this game, but when it comes to the Big 12, that's just the one conference that it always feels like at any time a team could sneak up on you and beat you. So we're going to find out what this Texas team is made of. If they're really like that and they deserve to be in the playoffs, they'll go out here and take care of business. And honestly, this game should be like at least a touchdown win. Like I said, if they're being really about their business and they're a team that deserves to be in the playoffs and can compete, they'll take care of Oklahoma State pretty easily. So that game's interesting, though, because if Oklahoma State, if Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State can pull off that upset, that's the first domino that needs to fall for Ohio State to backdoor their way into the playoffs. So And then the next game we have, I want to talk about is at 4. This is probably going to be one of the best games of the weekend, also. Um, and honestly, I think that Alabama and Georgia are two of the best teams in college football. I think that Alabama started off the year really bad, but I think they've kind of put it together since then. And I know they just had the close game with Auburn, but I mean that rivalry is considered probably only second to the game. So it's again one of those rivalry, where the team's going to show up. It was at Auburn, and I mean they gave them their best shot, and Alabama pulled it off with a miracle at the end. So either way, I think that this is going to be a really good game. I think that Georgia will probably struggle a little bit with Jalen Milroe's athleticism. I love that kid, man. I think that he coming back next year, he's going to end up being like a Heisman contender. I think he's coming back. I don't know too much about it, but I would assume so because he's very raw as a quarterback. But I like what he can do, and he's such a great deep ball thrower, and the reason for that is because he can move around the pocket and get to a spot where he can set his feet and throw the ball. So I don't know, man. I think that Georgia's really going to struggle with that athleticism. Alabama's going to struggle with Georgia's offense too, though, man, because I made the statement yesterday that I think that Carson Beck is what I expected Kyle McCord to be this year. Just imagine if Ohio State had Carson Beck as their quarterback. I mean, if they had that, Ohio State's undefeated right now going into the Big Ten championship and probably the favorite, to win the national championship at that point. So I don't know. Carson Beck's a good QB. I'm worried about the same thing I've always been worried about with Georgia this year, and that's they got Mike Bobo as their new offensive coordinator. And I know that if you're a Georgia fan, you're probably going to say, "Well, we've been throwing the ball more. Our offense has been more wide open this year." Which, okay, that's cool. That's fine and dandy. But as an Ohio State fan, I know that when it comes down to big games against the best teams that you play against, coaches fall on their tendencies. Ryan Day continues to do it over and over and over again, no matter how many times we lose, because he falls on his tendencies and runs stretch to the boundary 17 times a game for 2 yards a gain, 2 yards a run. Sorry about that. But anyway, no matter how many times, that shoots us in the foot, he always falls back on that. Urban Meyer used to fall back on running the quarterback. Any big game, any tight game situation, JT Barrett was running the ball. So I'm worried about Mike Bobo trying to lean too much on his run game in this game. And if Georgia does get behind, I'm worried about them coming back because the Alabama defense is really good. So that's one of the interesting games. Then you got Michigan versus Iowa. I'm not spending my time talking about this game. I'm just going to be honest with you. Michigan should win this game easily. There's a kind of interesting matchup watching Michigan's offense against Iowa's defense, but I don't think that Iowa's defense is better than Ohio State's, and we already seen how that went. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, they should take care of business. This will probably be like 31-0 or some shit like that. I don't think Iowa will move the ball probably past the 50-yard line. Their offense is just that bad. I mean, and they just have nothing on that side of the ball. Moving on from that game, though, the last game I wanted to talk about here is the last game that would have major implications for Ohio State, and that's Louisville versus Florida State for the ACC championship. So currently, Florida State doesn't have their starting quarterback, and he's not coming back. He had a really gruesome injury. Hate to see that. That was Jordan Travis. And I mean, honestly, this team's been undefeated all year and has been struggling even with him. So to me, this is the most likely game or domino that needs to happen for Ohio State to make the playoffs is Louisville beating Florida State, because Louisville's been a good football team all year. They kind of dropped a game to Pitt. I think they just dropped another game this past week they played. But they're a team that can come out and put a game plan together and beat a team. And with Florida State not having their quarterback, I could easily see that happening. So if I had to pick that one, I would pick Louisville to win. And then the only one I didn't pick, I guess, was the Georgia-Alabama game. I'm going to take Georgia to win this game just because I think that Carson Beck's arm is going to be a factor. I think that Carson Beck is able to make some throws that honestly most quarterbacks around the country can't. I think that he really doesn't get enough credit for what he's doing down there. I think it's because Georgia is back-to-back national champions. it wouldn't have really mattered what they did this year. No one would have been impressed by it, right? You're going to look at that team and be like, oh, well, somebody came within 10 points of them, so they're not as good as they were last year. And the way that the way that Kirby puts together his game plans for the playoffs is something that everyone should be worried about. If Georgia makes it to the playoffs, they have a good shot to win the national championship. And honestly, with them going undefeated through the regular season, and then playing in the SEC championship, I'm kind of the belief that I don't think that there's a potential scenario where Georgia doesn't make the playoffs. I think that they're in already. I think they're in. I think that this year is the final year of the 4-team playoff, and I feel like if the committee was ever going to do some savage shit like leave out a 12-1 conference champ for a 12-1 non-conference champ or something like that, I think this would be the year they do it, because then they can justify it and be like, look, this was such a hard decision. We didn't know what to do. We went with who we thought was the better football team. But hey, next year is 12-team playoffs, so this will never happen again. Just don't worry about it. Let's just get through this and we're done. So I think Georgia's in no matter what. If Alabama beats them, you have some kind of nightmare scenarios for the committee. Um, where like let's say Texas wins, Oregon wins, uh, Michigan wins, Florida State wins, and Alabama wins. That gets very, very weird for the committee, because now you have to choose. Alabama would make it obviously for being the SEC championship, the champion, excuse me, SEC champion, and then Oregon would make it, Michigan would make it, and it's going to be down to Texas, Alabama, and Florida State at that point. And I think that they would not view Florida State as a better team than Georgia. I just don't think they would. And then Texas, I mean, I don't know, maybe that would be the team that gets in that scenario, because their win against Alabama would look even better if Alabama won the SEC championship. But if you think that it wouldn't be at least an argument between Georgia making it over Texas, who has a loss to Oklahoma and has looked kind of trash in a lot of their games this year and played close games, 100% that would be an argument that would be had within that committee meeting. And I don't know. I would not think that they would put Texas in over Georgia. I just really don't. I mean, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. This is the only year where it's played out like this, really, where it was between this many teams. So it is interesting. And either way, I think we'll be in for a banger weekend of football. And then, I don't know, cross my fingers. Hopefully all the dominoes fall for Ohio State to sneak their way in, because I just want to be excited about football, about them playing football again this year. All right, so I want to move on from that stuff. That was just, like I said, like this weekend, man. Make sure you guys watch the games. Even if you're just an Ohio State fan, go watch the games. Enjoy the games. I mean, I don't know. The Michigan game, if they start winning by a lot, I'm not watching that shit, because I'm not watching them celebrate. But we had enough watching them celebrate. But if it's a good game, I'll watch it. And then the other ones, I mean, I want to see what these teams look like, man, because every team that's in this championship weekend has looked vulnerable at some point this year. And I think that I know who the best teams are if they put their best game plan together and play their best game. But that's just simply not how it works, man. People have bad games, and shit happens. People have great games. So that's exciting for me. We'll see. I'm watching it this weekend. Anyway, I want to move on to some of the transfer portal stuff, and then I got to get out of here. So Ohio State's had 3 players enter the transfer portal so far. And honestly, it's 3 guys that you just are probably third string. I mean, the one guy that I think really hurts is Amari Abor. I already talked about this a little bit on my show the other day, but I really like the way the athleticism and just kind of the attitude that this kid brought to the team. I would imagine he's probably going home back to Texas and, some team down there, whether that's Texas, Texas Tech, SMU, someone like that. He's probably going back home. But it is what it is, man. I mean, we have really good defensive ends, I think. We do need some depth in that room. We'll get into that when I talk about what positions Ohio State needs to target in the portal. So the other 2 guys that hit the portal, I think, yesterday were Victor Cutler. Victor Cutler was a transfer that came in from like Louisiana Tech or whatever last year, and they wanted him to play center. I mean, he didn't win the center job, and honestly, I think from what I heard is that he just kind of wasn't really going to be good enough to play here. I mean, and it is what it is. Hopefully, he'll end up being at another Power Five school, and he'll be a starter, and you know, have a chance to make something out of himself. I don't think that's too big of a blow for Ohio State. I just don't think he was ever really going to play here. So, and then the last guy that entered was Cam Martinez. This is a name that Ohio State fans, I don't know, people hear this name and they think not great things, right? And I'm honestly, I don't, I think this kid has a chance to actually be successful if he goes to the right team and they use him properly. Ohio State had him playing like defensive back, or he was that playing that nickel role, and I just think that was never suited for him. I don't think that position was ever. Uh, excuse me. I don't think that position was ever a good position for him, especially if you're going to ask him to play man coverage. You know, basically anytime that he was put in man coverage, bad things happened. People targeted him, and honestly, like this is the guy with like the infamous highlight tape. Everyone always talks about it. He's got a 10-minute highlight tape of nothing but touchdowns from his high school, of punt return touchdowns and touchdowns because he was the quarterback that was running the ball a lot, kind of that freak athlete type guy that's just making everybody miss. But we know, we used him as a defensive back, and I mean, I don't know. I don't think that he's a bad person. I don't think that he's a bad football player even, because I mean, you look at his career at Ohio State. The one interception he had, he took it for a pick six, and it was not like an easy pick six either. If you go back and watch it, he looked like he knew what he was doing with the ball in his hands. He I don't know. Hopefully he'll end up somewhere, like I said, a P5 team, and they'll utilize him to do some different things. Or if he's going to be a defensive back, maybe they can put him in positions where he's not asked to cover guys in man coverage. But like I said, good luck to him. I don't think that's a huge loss for Ohio State. I think that he was probably the third string guy as of this point, or at the very least, he was second string at nickel, and they shut the season down for him just so he could have that ability to transfer out and play his last year at another school. So I don't know. None of those are really huge losses. I don't think. Even a Bohr, Bohr is one of them guys who I think could turn out to be a really, really good player, like a draftable player. But at the same time, you got Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson, and those guys are probably going to be your starters next year. And that's even if JTT or Jack Sawyer doesn't return, because one of them could easily return back. Plus, you have a Mitchell Melton, who is the guy who finally went through a season healthy, so you can have him next year, and he honestly looks like a really good athlete off the edge. So I don't know. We'll see. I do want to get into the positions that Ohio State needs to target in the portal, and this is just my opinion. I mean, if you guys think I'm wrong, let me know in the comments or in the chat. But I think that the first position, I'm going to start on defense, right? I think that Ohio State needs to bring in a defensive end. I already talked about this a little bit. And I mean, if you have a chance to get like a big name guy, you're absolutely going to bring that person in. And I think that at any position, honestly, like I don't care if you have a room, even cornerback. If you have, the room we have right now is phenomenal. But if there's a big name like Surefire, I'm going to be at the very least, a second round pick type guy. And if you develop me right and use me right, I'm going to be a first round pick. You get him no matter what position it's in. I just want to get that out of the way because I don't want people coming in here being like, oh, so you're saying you wouldn't take this person? That's not how it is. If it's someone who's that good, you take them no matter what. But the first position, I think they need to add some depth at defensive end. We're going to have Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry. We got Mitchell Melton and Joshua Mickens, who came in as a true freshman last year. And I mean, after that, the depth is kind of looking shaky. You don't really have guys there, especially if JTT and Jack Sawyer leave. So definitely look to the portal for a defensive end. I think probably if there's a safety out there that you think is good enough to play, like that free safety role that Josh Proctor was playing, you definitely go for that too. And then as long as Tommy Eichenberger and Steel Chambers are leaving, I think you maybe go for a linebacker. I don't know. If Cody Simon's coming back, you probably don't, right? Because then you got Cody Simon and you have CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers who, I mean, at that point, I guess they're battling for the other spot. I mean, I don't know. I feel like CJ Hicks should have been playing more this year, in my opinion. But it is what it is. They kind of are just. Jim Knowles told us he's too dumb to play here, basically, and I guess that's how they think, how they view him. So I don't know. Flipping over to the offense, though, I think you definitely go for an offensive tackle, right? I mean, any that's like the most valuable position on offense, almost other than quarterback. You need to go after an offensive tackle, as and honestly, you need to try to go after the best ones that are in the portal, because the goal would ultimately be to have at least replace Josh Fryer. I think Josh Simmons is going to be a good player next year, and he should probably stay at left tackle. But you replace Josh Fryer, whether he's leaving or whether you kick him inside, or if you just upgrade and get a better player in that position. Either way, you're going to bring in an offensive tackle. You really need to. You probably need to bring in a center too. I don't know if Jacob James is still going to be here, or if he what position he's playing. And they were projecting him to be the center, but it ended up being Carson Hinsman. But Hinsman really needs some competition, because honestly, he was not great this year. So, and I like that kid too. Hinsman has that kind of attitude and toughness that I like in my lineman, but he honestly just didn't play well, And I don't know. It's Ohio State. Like, you got to be one of the best in the country at your position, or you get lapped, or you can get replaced. That's just how it is. Um, I don't think we need anything else on the offensive line really in terms of the portal. I don't think we really need a running back. I think that running back room is still kind of good. I think Chip's probably going to come back. Then you have Chip, Dallin, and Evan Pryor, and then you got a lot of running backs coming in the next recruiting class. So I think they're good there. Wide receiver is kind of an interesting position. Assuming that, let's assume that Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, and Julian Fleming are all gone. That's all three of your starters. You have Carnell Tate, you have Brandon Ennis, you have the Rogers brothers. So, I mean, you have a great class there, but I think maybe if you can, you want to bring in someone who has more experience, especially if you can get like a top flight guy. One of the guys that entered the portal that caught my attention was what's his name? Evan Stewart from Texas A&M. And honestly, I don't even know what class that guy is, but I just know that he's got a lot of experience on the field. I wouldn't hate bringing in a wide receiver transfer. Just one, though. You don't need more than one. You're probably going to end up losing a guy or two from that room to the portal when you look at that 22 class, and even potentially someone in the 23 class. We'll see how that works out. But, I mean, that room is just it's a very good room, and you don't want to ruin it. But at the same time, like, if you can bring in experience in a room that doesn't have that, then you're going to bring that in, because, I mean, we honestly don't know what these guys are going to turn out to be, right? Like, we're all excited about Carnell Tate, about Brandon Ennis, about, Noah Rogers, Bryson Rogers. We don't know what they're going to turn out to be. So, and in the meantime, you need to make sure that you have solid players that are ready to go out and try to win a championship. And then the last position I want to talk about is quarterback. I've been going back and forth about this with myself and with some of my friends. I don't know if it's a good idea to bring in a transfer quarterback. For me, I'm kind of leaning towards no. I think that you have talented guys in this room, and honestly, I don't want to get into the rut of we have to bring in a fourth, fifth year quarterback that just had a great season in another school, and then if we miss on that one time, then we're fucked. Our quarterback room is now blown up, and we're screwed if we bring in someone and he ends up not being good, because ultimately then you're going to have him battling with someone who is also not as good. So I think within the room now, with Kyle McCord, hopefully not Kyle McCord, but with Devin Brown, Lincoln Keenholtz, and then you have Aaron Nolan coming in, which, listen, I know a lot of people are excited about Aaron Nolan. People need to get it through their head. The kid is not starting as a true freshman. He's not even having a great season in high school, at least, or had at least, statistically. And his team was not that great this year either. But I have faith in him. I really like that. I think Aaron Nolan is going to end up being better than Dylan Raiola. I think he'll be one of the best quarterbacks out of this draft, kind of in like the C.J. Stroud mode. Just once Ryan Day gets a chance to develop him, I think he'll take another step in arm strength and accuracy, which he already has a lot of that accuracy. And he's an athlete. He can go out there and make plays. So I like the kid. I'm not saying anything bad about him. He's not going to start here as a true freshman. Ryan Day's probably never ever going to start a true freshman a day in his life as the Ohio State coach. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But I'm leaning towards no quarterback in the portal for those reasons. I just don't think you want to blow that room up. And you have guys in there that are talented. I'm still high on Devin Brown. I'm super high on Lincoln Keenholz. Kyle McCord. I mean, I don't. I don't even know what to say. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see the development that I feel like I needed to see from him throughout the year. And I mean, I feel like it costed Ohio State a team that's probably championship caliber at just about every other position except maybe linebacker. So, anyway, that's going to be it for the show. Like I said, I wanted to talk about the transfer portal, championship weekend, all that good stuff. Enjoy the games this weekend, guys. I'll be live again on Monday. I'm sure that some shit will go down before then, and we'll be able to talk about, is Ohio State in the playoffs, or are we looking at what young guys need to play going into the bowl game and who's leaving, who's not. So peace out, guys. You have a good day, and thank you for watching. Oh, yeah, hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. But peace out, guys.